And I'm joined now by our national security correspondent, Dave Patterson. Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be on your program. Thank you.
So let's talk about Pete Hegseth and his Arsenal of Freedom tour. Tell us what it's about and why this is a good thing.
Well, basically, what he's doing is he's going to a number of the major defense industry corporations and quite a few smaller ones as well. And what he's doing is it's kind of a cheerleading tour for getting them on board with on cost, on schedule, and performing. And it's a perennial problem that I jokingly say this, and it's probably not fair, but it's pretty accurate, I think. The government looks at the industry and says, we need it faster, better, cheaper, right?
Mhm.
Industry says, oh boy, we can make it faster, better, cheaper, no matter how long it takes or how much it costs. And, and the government says, great, where do we sign? Well, I think those days are over, and I think that's the point he's trying to make to these corporations. That, in fact, what's going to happen is we're going to make things faster, and you're going to be on cost, or you're not going to be one of our providers, and it's just that simple.
He's whipping them into shape.
He is absolutely, and it remains to be seen whether or not who's going to win here. But I think that with President Trump in Hegseth's corner, I think Trump will win this one.
So, how important, we know that it's important, but talk about the real nuts and bolts of why it's so important that we reshore our manufacturing and the defense spending.
Well, it has to do with the security of the supply chain, really. And so that when you have your suppliers all over the world, and particularly suppliers that are in nations not necessarily cordial to the United States,
Like China.
like China, exactly like China, and like China, did I mention China? Uh,
China.
uh, that there's always the possibility that one, the sources will be cut off, that there will be pilferage, there'll be obviously the theft of IP, and so it puts the supply chain, which is critical to our defense industry, obviously, it puts it in great jeopardy. And so you have a much better chance of having a very, very secure supply chain if it's onshore, if all of our suppliers, and incidentally, when I say that, I mean, I realize that that's going to be almost impossible, but you certainly have to start somewhere. And I think that they are wanting to bring back all of the supply chains as much as they can into the United States so they have much greater security and the supply chain is more secure.
So why is he in New England? Why did he go to New England? I mean, what kind of fruit are we going to see from these visits?
Well, I think that New England probably is going to be, perhaps more on the political side than on the defense side because eh, New England is an interesting place. I mean, you've got Raytheon and particularly and so you really need to bring and it's a much denser population. There's
Mhm.
a lot of defense industry there, so it makes sense that you would do that. And but you've got other places as well that are equally important. I mean, uh, you've got obviously, Dallas with Lockheed, and you've got Northrop Grumman in California. So you've got a lot of places to go, and whether or not he is singling out uh, the New England for some kind of special treatment, I'm not confident that that's the case.
So when will we start seeing, contracts coming in? How does this take place behind the scenes? Because we're just seeing the headlines. We don't know what's going on, but you've worked in the Pentagon, so you know how this works.
Well, some of the things that you're going to see that are kind of clues that something's happening is you'll have what we call a request for information that will
Mhm.
go out to a number of different companies, and everybody then uh, puts in their submission about how they would do that particular thing that the request for information is about, whether it's a new tank or whether it's a new armored personnel carrier, whatever it is. That's the government's way of saying how many of you are interested, And how many of you out there think that you can actually do this? And do you have any better ideas about what this thing should look like than we do? And then there's, you'll see industry days. They'll put out a call for having an industry day. And that's when all of the interested industries come to listen to the program executive officers and the government talk about what it is that they need. So these are kind of clues that
Mhm.
something is afoot, and it's pretty standard fare that that's what's going to happen. So that's what you're looking for. And they just had back in September, I believe, I take that back, August of 2025, they had a big, effectively an industry day for Golden Dome for America, and had that
Mhm.
down in Huntsville, Alabama. And so that's where industry got a really good idea of what it is that the government is thinking.
So what is this going to do for our economy? You said that, you jokingly said the industry wants to do it on, delay the process or will delay the process and kind of take the rules with a grain of salt. When are we going to start seeing results for the economy, and what will it do for the economy?
Well, I think it's President Trump has said in 2027 that he's going to ask for $1.5 trillion dollars. And that's going to put a lot of money into the economy. And there's here's kind of a rough order of magnitude calculus. For every dollar that goes into a defense industry in the surrounding economy, it generates between $5 and $10.
Hmm.
So as soon as these contracts start to come, and they're actually beginning to take place, particularly with Golden Dome. And you may have seen there was in the trades a contract that went out for hundreds of drones. And so you're going to, as soon as the contract is let, you start to see the money flow. And I think that it's just we're on the cusp of seeing a rather dramatic increase in dollars going into the economy. The one fly in this ointment, of course, is Congress and the inability of Congress to pass a budget on time.
Right.
And it's extremely debilitating for any kind of a program manager who is trying to put a program on some sort of a equilibrium basis so that he can or she can properly manage, because
Right.
now when you don't know where your next dollar's coming from, uh
You can't
and
spend it.
yeah, well, that's right. And CRs are particularly onerous in the fact that you can't spend more than you did the previous year.
Right.
And then if you can't spend more than your previous year and you have a new contract coming up, no new contracts, right,
Right.
on a CR.
Mhm.
So now you got to wait. And for every month that goes by, you had a budget that was supposed to be equally distributed throughout those months. Now you got to cram it in to
Last months. Right.
the last months of the fiscal year. And of course, that's almost impossible. And so now you've got, unexecutable programs, and they've got this big, chunk of change out there. Congress sees that, and now it's rescission bait. And,
Right.
and they take it back.
So what message is this sending? We were talking about China a little bit. What message is this sending to the adversaries of the US that President Trump is
Oh,
doing all these things?
I I think that they are getting message loud and clear that, whatever you thought was the norm for the United States, think again, because Donald Trump he does what he says he's going to do. I mean,
He does.
what a concept, right?
Right.
And he's very interested in having a robust industrial base that's on cost, on schedule, and performing. And the other thing
Mhm.
is that I think that one of the key things, and Hegseth said it in his first speech. Remember, he had a big conclave with all of his industrial CEOs, and he said, I want to have things done with time as the essential element. In
Right.
other words, time to field. That's one of the key performance parameters that we're going to put in all of our contracts. And well, of course, why wouldn't you? And
Mhm.
there was a time when we actually were able to turn things out. You realize that, the F-15, one of the great fighters of all times,
Right.
it went from a clean sheet of paper to a flying airplane in 5 years.
Wow.
You know, the
That's remarkable.
F-16 had even had a fly off, and it was in, approximately the same amount of time. So it can be done, and it's just a matter of, making it worth the industry's time and effort to do it. I have found that the defense industry will do whatever you ask them to do, and they believe that they're adequately and fairly compensated. So, everybody kind of makes them out the villain. Well, they aren't. They'll do whatever you ask them to do, and you make it worth their while. And
Hmm.
you can do that by, putting it into the contract.